So, where do we begin? I think one of the keys to understanding reality isn't that everything is eventual, it's that everything is inevitable. What is inevitability, you can ask? Inevitability is the inability to avoid a set circumstance from occurring. What does that mean? Everything that has ever happened or ever will happen were things that had to happen for reality to continue existing as it does. And what does that mean? Well, we live in a world that we technologically observe as full of what we would consider as free will. But by and large, the decisions are made for us long ago, long before we even were a thought. But the illusion of free will, the causality of man, are things that have been widely debated for the longest time. I am currently actively in the process of changing who I am, and yet at the same time, I don't think I could be doing anything but what I am doing right now. I am doing what I am doing because of where I am from, and also because they will lead me to a very specific point. So, what does all of this mean? It means that I couldn't not be doing what I'm doing because I am, it is inevitable. Even this idea, this thought, this very phrase, everything is down very measured, very much a measured response to what things are. Every set of ideas, every perspective, everything had to happen. Everything has to happen. Everything that could possibly happen will happen. Everything that couldn't happen. Anything is everything. All things exist to be mirrors of one another so that we can define what we are, because one thing is never enough to define anything. So the fact that we exist is proof that we have existed and will continue to exist, but at the same time are already gone. You are an eventuality, meaning that you had to exist, you had to do what you are doing, but you also have to not exist at some point. And what does that add up to? That adds up to the fact that the culmination of your being is a fragment of the universe, as it were, observable only through multiple iterations. We are what we are because of who our past was. Everybody led us to being where we are right now. And what does this end up meaning? We have a very set future ahead of us. No matter what you do, it's just a question of how comfortable you end up making your future for yourself along the way, by sacrifices along the way. So we're leading towards this future, this ever-present march, leading us towards something that we can't even truly acknowledge or understand. So what does that mean? It means that we need to relax, because worrying is a pointless endeavor, because everything is happening a very specific way, for a very specific reason. Now, before you ask, I'm not a religious person. These ideas are things that are transcendent through versions of reality, and usually things that are only internalized by people who have had some sort of transcendental voyage, a sort of unbecoming, rebecoming, an understanding of the death of yourself and the universe, and then the rebirth, because you start to realize that everything that had ever happened, every possibility of your life, every change, every nuance has already been done before infinite times, and every choice that you make is therefore inevitable, as it leads to a very specific path where very specific things happen. And you can only see this one way because your brain is such a limited commodity. And those who have expanded their ideas of reality are then able to see something else that is nearly impossible to explain because, well, how do you explain this concept to people? We've been trying to do so for thousands and thousands of years, and it has been trying to manifest itself in many different ways. And it is because of the fact that most of these people are seen in a very specific light that it ends up becoming something that stays shut behind doors. It ends up being something that people are afraid to discuss, except recently, where something happened and there was a large-scale discussion in the public where people were able to share these experiences. So now we look at this and we say, well, what is this? Well, this is the shared experience all of humanity has, and it would be something that should be easy for everyone to ignore, even with the facts and the reason that it's provable, because it's a lot easier to ignore reality when you don't want to hear it. But it's also proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that reality as we know it is defined a lot more simply than we can realize. We just don't have the words for it yet, because there are some concepts that are too much for simple, basic minds to understand, which is why I'm trying to aim for what I am aiming for, which is this type of understanding that all people can comprehend, even if their languages are not the same, even if there are informational barriers between persons, even if people are not physically capable of being much more than they are, if anything. I want for a person who is a vegetable in a hospital to be able to communicate as fluently and as punctually as any other person. Hell, half the time they could probably be better at it than some of the people who speak fluently as it is, because they've had more time to sit and think and reassign their values to what they decide is important by sitting and thinking, ruminating. And then the strong survive, and then the weak allow themselves to die out, as it were. This is one of the factors of inevitability of humanity, is that the strong survive, and the weak are subjected to the will of the strong. It's a thing that many people fight against and say is unfair. I don't think it is fair, but I think it is the way that it is, and it will not ever change as long as our version of reality doesn't change. And our version of reality has been going on for thousands of years and will continue on for thousands of years before anything major changes the way things are. And your life and my life and the way things are the way things are and always will be for the next several thousand repetitions, until people can start seeing through the differences between realities and start seeing that there is choice. And once this happens, revolution will take foot, and we could end up having such things as the things that occurred in the past, where what we were observing was something that was alien to us then, but it was only because it was a fragment of a different timeline. And how do you present this to people? Well, you end up using that to form reality. Would it be argued that we are a alien version of ourselves, and that we can only exist because a future version of us brought back to the past a part of us that made us who we are today? And because of that, we are now on an infinite cycle that leads to the same location over and over again, but also never necessarily the same place twice, even though you can have the same iteration occurring over millennia. You would end up having multiple instances that will have minor differences between them. So these choices aren't inconsequential, but at the same time they are. It's so strange and hard to express, but it's also a thing where being is the same thing as not being, whereas energy can neither be created nor destroyed, therefore we will always be. But what will we be? What we are will transform and transcend, because a human body is too simple of a thing for a mind to fully encapsulate. There have been ideologies that have been held over for thousands of years, since before people even had the ability to write them or properly express them, and they're finally starting to manifest now.